Beltane is coming up. One of my favorite holidays of the wheel of the year. I love flowers. I love springtime. An acquaintance of mine once described Beltane as a divine time to be a bovine, to refer to how alive all of the grass is, and it's suddenly much more delicious for cows to eat. It is, however, a little bit problematic. It's very often celebrated as a sexy holiday. In certain Wiccan traditions, it's the holiday where the god and the goddess meet and have sex, and that can leave queer members of all stripes feeling a little bit uncomfortable. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about why Beltane can be problematic. I'm going to dive in a little deeper and ways that you can make sure your Beltane rituals are a little more queer inclusive. I'm also going to drink this tea that I massively oversteeped. I tried to film a video doing this makeup look and talking about the history and customs of Beltane, and I accidentally filmed it all as a speed lapse. So what is Beltane? You may be asking. If you are asking, this might be the wrong channel for you, but Beltane is a pagan holiday that takes place on or around May 1st. It's also between the vernal and equinox and the summer solstice, and sometimes measured astrologically when the sun enters some degree Taurus, but I don't know that. It's also when the hawthorn blooms. It's a holiday that celebrates spring, life, summer coming in, because sometimes if you divide the year into summer and winter, the way a lot of old Irish societies were built, focused more on the rhythms of where your cattle are than what your plants are doing. It's the beginning of summer, celebrated very often with maypoles and dancing and a lot of raunchy jokes. Some Wiccan traditions, Beltane is the day when there's the holiday when the god and the goddess come together, make baby. Unfortunately, the people writing these myths down, Gerald Gardner, Doreen Valiente, etc., lived in a much more heteronormative society than we do today. So a holiday about sex and love and reproduction becomes very focused on reproduction and cisgender heterosexual love, sex, and reproduction. Lots of pagan culture likes to create dedicated space for women, and so there's gender segregation in that way, where this rituals for women, this is a red tent, a sort of like a healing space, because witchcraft in the States is very rooted in the feminist and anti-nuclear and anti-war sentiments of the 70s. But on Beltane specifically, you very often get rituals separated by gender. The men go do this portion of ritual, the women go do this portion of ritual, and those activities that the men and women have are so often fucky and like penetrative type fucky. And it's not a crime to be heterosexual. Some of my closest friends are heterosexuals. But if you are having rituals where you divide people up by gender, you're gonna be leaving out and raising questions about non-binary and trans people. If the activities are very based in one group receiving and one group projecting, you're going to be assuming uncomfortable things about people's bodies and about the way that they fuck. We can do better. You can do better. So how do we make Beltane less problematic? How do we make sure that we are including everyone? And also maybe how do we make Beltane a little more family friendly? The easiest kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater method is to remove sex entirely from the celebration. Now, on the one hand, that's sidestepping a problem rather than thinking it through. And one of the important things about the pagan movement, one of the, I think, really important traits, one of the unique things about us is that we do have a more positive and open relationship to sexuality. Because we talk about fucking in church and we talk about how fucking is nice, we carry less shame around sex and we transmit less shame around sex to our next generation. But sometimes that gets a little too raunchy, and sometimes that is not appropriate for children. I'm not going to tell you where to draw the line because that line is drawn by parents, not by, But I think it's an interesting thing to think about. And in removing sex from Beltane, you don't necessarily remove the rest of the holiday. Instead of celebrating the god and the goddess mating, celebrate your good neighbors. Celebrate the coming of summer and the weaving together of energies. Celebrate flowers. The book Circle Round by Starhawk and I think Diane Baker, editing cat, correct me if I'm wrong, has a story called The Goddess Blesses All Forms of Love. And it's about a maypole, and each of the ribbons in the maypole is a different kind of love. And there is romantic love, and there is like homosexual and heterosexual love in there, but there's also the love that we have for our families, the love we have for our pets, the love we have for Earth, the love that we have for our jobs. So you can use that imagery and metaphor and that to still be like a core corner of your ritual, a cornerstone of your ritual and your celebration without necessarily bringing sex into it. Removing sex from Beltane sidesteps any questions about queer inclusion and accidentally excluding stuff and accidental cis normativity, and also makes Beltane a little more appropriate for certain ages of children. That being said, you're sidestepping the problem. You're not actually thinking about what it means to write a queer inclusive ritual. You're not thinking about the stories that we tell ourselves about sex and gender and love. Sometimes you can remove sex from Beltane to make it family friendly, and sometimes kids should just show up to Beltane and hear some jokes that they're not gonna understand yet. The next things you can do are degendering and de-sizzing your god and goddess, your sun and earth, your sky and earth. A lot of Beltane imagery is a strong, male, penetrative sun hits and enters the receptive, feminine, vaginal earth. That's some cis het bullshit. You can queer and degender or desex or decis or just kind of play around with this story. You can still have the story of fucking, the sky and the earth fucking, but maybe it's a sky goddess pegging the earth father. Maybe it's the sky and the earth scissoring, and neither of them has a gender. Maybe the beautiful sun goddess plows into her joy friend Earth, who we don't know what kind of genitals they got. They're just the earth. We can talk about a meeting and a melding of these powers. We can play around with these imageries and still have the polarity, still have the union, the passion, but by playing around with pronouns and playing around with who's got what and what kind of bits, you can make the ritual more complete and whole. But wait, you say, I can hear you. If I say that the hot trans sun goddess plows her joy friend Earth, doesn't that exclude cisgender heterosexuals? Because, like, you still are only saying one thing. You're right. So, I would say all of those. I wouldn't switch pronouns within the story, because that can get confusing if the sun goes from she, her to they, them. I don't brief everybody ahead of time. But I would say, the sun comes down and kisses her lover and enters her, and the earth receives and in turn plunges into the sky or something. You can just kind of tell the same story several ways. Alternately, You can just kind of rotate every year what pronouns and bits the god and the goddess and the sun and the earth get. This year it's two lesbians. Next year it's a heterosexual pair, but they're both trans. The year after that, the sun and the moon, or sun and the earth, are actually the same being, and they're just jacking it. I'm a wonderful reverent priestess. Degendering and desizifying and playing around with gender for these stories is just a good exercise for fun and to like stretch your muscles and see how you can still tell the important part of the story without getting caught up in necessarily the human shapes of it. The next major queer pitfall of Beltane is that dividing of the membership into the boys and the girls and their really gendered tasks. This causes problems in a number of ways. You non-binary folks don't know where to go. I had a friend who legitimately, they were at an open Beltane event. The group split up, and the priestess didn't know what to do with my friend and didn't have anything for them to do during ritual, during the like gendered tasks section, which is just a failure on the part of that priestess. You should have something for everyone to do. And as I mentioned, it can also make a lot of assumptions about the way that we feel love and the way that we engage in gender and engage in energy. My coven used to split up on Beltane before ritual and have the men go and find the maypole, which had been hidden in the woods ahead of time, and the women decorated the hole that the maypole was going to go into with flowers. And that assumed that the women are passive and that the men are active. I was one of the first people to go onto the other team because I'm just too gay to be doing the straight stuff. First option for how to handle that is to have the two tasks, but let people decide which task they want to do. Let me and all of the mouthy bitches go off and do the butch task, and all the little twinks and trad wives, my new lasers and feelings hack, go and decorate the hole. You could also separate the group if you do need roughly the same number of people doing both tasks by something other than gender or perceived gender. You can just kind of divide them by the middle, count off 1, 2, anything that a camp counselor did back in the day. You can also still divide people up by gender, but include a third activity. The men go chop wood, the women carry water, and the non-binary folks are spinning the thread. Just have a third task to acknowledge that not everybody is in that binary. I know this sounds like a lot of a blue-hair pronoun person having a hissy fit and ruining Beltane. I promise I'm not. As you can see, my hair is kind of silver. My pronouns are she, her. But this stuff really does matter. My friend was hurt and dejected and felt excluded when they didn't have anything to do in ritual. My partner has always felt really uncomfortable around Beltane because they're sex repulsed asexual, and Beltane isn't safe for them, basically, because of the overwhelming sexy vibes that everyone brings to it. I was uncomfortable being on Team Hole and decorating the earth pussy. This stuff can matter, and exploring ways to be more inclusive, even if nobody needs these explorations of gender, even if no one needs these considerations the way I need these considerations, you're making your rituals stronger by playing and by considering more. Considering why you're bringing gender into an activity, considering why you're bringing sex into an activity, considering why certain people do certain things. By stopping and considering where sex and gender intersect your rituals, you are able to use those tools with more intentionality. And that's always good. Thank you for listening to me carp on and on about Beltane and about gay shit. Subscribe to the channel if you like priestess content, the logistics and the mechanics of leading a pagan group, or if you like fun lifestyle content, because sometimes I do little makeup tutorials or I do cooking videos. I'm Kate Bogg, one of many lanterns. Here's hoping I see you around again.